Folks, we gave you the story of Tamir Rice, who was shot and killed by police in Cleveland on November 22nd. This is that disturbing video as well. Again, he was playing at a park with a toy gun. The cops were called. You see the cop pulling up literally right next to the gazebo. Not even 3 seconds, he comes out, fires a bullet into Tamir Rice's body. Tamir died several hours later. Well, the family filed a federal lawsuit in December. Well, the city of Cleveland recently responded to that lawsuit, and in their response, they blamed Tamir for his own death. That has caused tremendous outrage across the country. Yesterday, Frank Jackson, the mayor of Cleveland, stood before the cameras to apologize.
We are apologizing today as a city to the family of Tamir Rice and to the citizens of the city of Cleveland for our poor use of words and our insensitivity in the use of those words. We recognize that in this case, it was inappropriate and that the way in which it was answered was insensitive. And that is why we are here today to apologize for something that was not intended to happen. But even though it was not intended to happen, as the law director said, it did bring hurt to some people, and I believe to the community at large, but the family in particular. And that is not our intent.
The city attorney has not responded. It was just last week that Steve Loomis, the head of the police union there, he actually called Tamir a grown man in a kid's body, saying he was 5'7", 191 pounds, and he was a menacing threat. That's what he said. He said he's menacing. He's 5'7", 191 pounds. He wasn't that little kid you're seeing in pictures. He's a 12-year-old in an adult body. Let's go to our panel here. We also continue to be joined by Ralph Godby, the former police chief in Detroit. Well, first of all, the mayor comes out and apologizes, but also the mayor had to also admit he has not had a word to say to Tamir Rice's family, to his mother. There's been no communication whatsoever. Nothing from this city.
Also, Frank Jackson just said more about some attorney report than he did about Tamir Rice's death. So he's more outraged about being embarrassed that they put that in there and blamed a 12-year-old for a cop rolling up and shooting him within 2 seconds.
A cop who has a horrible history, who was booted out of other police departments, got terrible reports, but the city is saying it's the kid's fault, Paul.
Well, I hate to sound like a lawyer, and this is why people don't like lawyers, but he kind of has to say that. I mean, the city is being sued. When something bad goes down, it's never just one person's fault or responsibility. It's the kind of culmination of a bunch of things that are unfortunate. So what they have to say is that, yeah, maybe we were negligent. Hopefully this case will be settled, and that's where they'll end up. But they do have to say it's not all our fault.
But if you were the city's attorney, wouldn't you say at some point, let's settle this? We see the video. They rolled up on the kid.
In fact, it was a 41-page response. It was a 41-page response from the city.
They're saying that it's Tamir Rice's fault. So again, you say that we can't say that it's one person's fault, but unless it's the victim.
Right. They're saying that because it's an adversarial system. So one side gets to represent Tamir, the other side represents the city. Again, it's inelegant, but it's the way law works.
Ralph?
Roland, if I could say this very quickly, I was the assistant chief when Ayanna Stanley Jones, a 7-year-old, was killed at the hands of the Detroit Police Department. And I had to stand before the media. I had to speak to the family at the hospital. Hiding behind the law does not relieve us of our humanity. And there's nothing, absolutely nothing, that would jeopardize your legal position by expressing empathy and sympathy towards a family and at least reaching out. So to me, that legal jargon, and I appreciate the attorney and I understand their position, but that does not really, it did not jeopardize our case one iota by us making those overtures. As mad as the community was, as hurt as the family was, to express that level of empathy, it really lowered the visceral response from the community. Is the community upset? The community still, to an extent, has some animus about it, but we have had no civil unrest or nothing of that nature because we got out early and we showed empathy and we expressed it very publicly.
And of course, the cop in that case, he got off. The judge threw those charges out as well after the first mistrial. But to Ralph's point, which I think is important, he said he talked to the family at the hospital.
Right.
The city of Cleveland, the mayor,
right,
has not talked to the family at all. Not even to express condolences.
Right. But the police departments, though, settle cases of police brutality all the time. I'm not certain what's so crazy about admitting wrongdoing and paying out. I mean, what is so wrong with that? Particularly in a case like this.
Okay, first, the family filed a lawsuit in December. This is February. The investigation still is not done. No city is going to settle a lawsuit in 2 months. It's
I'll tell you what.
That's simply not going to happen. But again, the problem here, though, is that the police said that they can't fully respond, the lawyers, because the investigation by the county is not complete. Well, there's also a way for you to respond. There's a different way for the city to respond. The bigger problem here is not just the city blaming Tamir for his own death. Is that the city has been inconsiderate, has made no effort to communicate with the family, not talk to the family. The mayor said a note was passed to the family through a spokesman. That's the problem. So they look callous all across the board, not just in this response, Erica.
Not that they look callous, they are callous.
They are callous, but the solution isn't necessarily the indictment of one police officer. It's this pattern and practice case.
Of the whole police force.
And that's what the Attorney General is trying to do. Again, he's got his eye on the Cleveland Police Department. He's brought one of these pattern and practice lawsuits against them. So again, it's the culture that's got to change.
But here's the deal. They have a federal monitor over the department. But this, Ralph, this is the second time in 10 years Cleveland has had that. And I do believe you have to have an indictment here, because here's the problem. If you keep having a federal oversight, if you keep having recommendations, but you don't have officers who pay for the crime. I mentioned Ayanna Roberts, that officer, he got off. We still haven't seen a trial yet of Jonathan Farrell, who was shot and killed by cops in Charlotte. That's part of the problem for the community. You don't see cops being held accountable in the criminal justice system for wrongdoing.
And Roland, if I could say this very quickly, held accountable could simply mean that the cop is no longer allowed to be a cop. Even if they're not convicted criminally, they're not allowed to police our community again if we have adequate standards in place, policy, and oversight. And I think the community is reasonable enough to understand that we cannot ameliorate all force. And there's a level of force that happens in policing, but when it's excessive, when it's outside of policy, when it violates constitutional rights, there has to be a remedy.
All right. Ralph Gavi, I surely appreciate it. Thank you so very much, as well as my panel here.